What is going on, everyone? Jayricofilms here, coming at you with my top 5 horror film video. These top 5 films that I'm about to show you are based upon like my experience with them as a child growing up with them, and what kind of impact they made throughout my childhood. So these films I remember watching the first time with my parents, my relatives, and such forth. Also, the way I'm styling this video is I'm going to talk over the clips while I show you my top 5 and also include some honorable mentions as well. So just sit back, relax, and enjoy this video. Thank you for watching. Jayricofilms signing out. There are so many bone-chilling, terrifying horror films that I've seen as a child growing up in the 90s. I'm still trying to tap into my memory pool to gather as many films that I remember, and I'm trying to revisit them hoping to have the same feeling of excitement 10 to 15 years ago. At a very young age, I was always fascinated by the excitement that horror films delivered. Sure, I had nightmares, as did any other kid that watched these type of films late at night, but this genre of film is what I remember most growing up, ranging from cheesy slasher flicks to outright piss-in-my-pants flicks. Nothing beats the horror genre when it comes to the month of October. So let me show you what my top 5 horror films are that I grew up on.
Here's Johnny.
Coming in at number 5 is one of my personal favorites, the 1976 release of Richard Donner's The Omen, starring Gregory Peck and Lee Remick. Just hearing and watching the thought of a demonized child wreaking havoc amongst innocent people, mixed in with an original storyline that has left many audiences across the nation haunted, as well as I. Sure, we have all heard of The Exorcist, but this film alone stands on its own 2 feet. I remember watching this film at a very young age with my family on a cold Halloween night and was scared shitless because I've never seen anything like this before. The crazy possessed nanny gives me the chills every time I revisit this film. The demonic acts the child ensues throughout the film, the priest who tries to help stop these horrific acts of violence, the list goes on and on. The number 666 is engraved in my memory, and I instantly think of this film whenever I hear it. If you are a horror fan as much as I am, and you haven't seen this film, then honestly, I'm held speechless. Go and check this film out before the month of October ends. This is a must-watch for all film enthusiasts out there. Coming in at number 4 is director Rob Meathead Reiner's 1990 horror thriller Misery, starring James Caan and Kathy Bates. This is a film that I always revisit every year just for the sheer fun of a crippled James Caan getting terrorized by a psychotic Kathy Bates. We all know that this is the role that will always be established with Kathy Bates when her name pops up. She played this role perfectly, and every time I saw her in such films like Dolores Claiborne, I always thought of her character as Annie Wilkes. Written by Stephen King, the master of horror, this film is a staple in my memory. There are only a few films that kept me in my sheets at night with the lights on. Did you ever as a kid, when you rented a VHS horror film, never want to touch the tape or see it in your presence after you viewed it for the first time? Yes, this was one of the handful of films that I never wanted to touch nor see in my sight after I saw it. Watching this film, you really feel the emotions James Caan character has been feeling throughout this film. I guess that's what great horror films are supposed to do, and a reason why I always come back to this film every month of October. Personal favorite of mine, and I think this film deserves a slot in everyone's top 5 to 20 list. Coming in at number 3 is the 1980 horror mystery film The Changeling, directed by Peter Maddock and starring the great George C. Scott. From what I remember, this is one of the first horror films that I've ever seen. I'm not positively sure because I don't have that sharp of a memory, but this is a film that I always rented every October as a kid. Now, this film is not for everyone, since this horror film is a slow burner, but it was also the creepiest film at the time when I was a kid. Nothing like this film compares to films as of now, and it definitely was made before the 80s cheese fest that came shortly after. George C. Scott was pitted in a role that I have never seen him nor imagined him playing. George C. Scott in a horror film? Now, there are films before this that portray the same paranormal activities that this film did in the past, but this had to feel the most realistic in my opinion. The practical effects of ghostly presence in a haunted mansion was just a handful of paranormal excitement and chills this film brought while viewing it as a kid. Never have I experienced this film before, and every time I do view this film 15 to 20 years later, I still get the same chills. An experience I hope all of you go through if you do decide to give this film a chance. Just don't expect any eye-popping zombie-infested gore fest to ensue in this film, but to take in all the original glory in this film portrays for its future horror brothers to release thus after. Please give this film a chance. The Changeling. You won't be disappointed. Coming in at number 2 is the 1990 film It, starring Tim Curry. I remember watching this on television on a 2-day part mini TV series and was instantly horrified by the killer clown. The last time we saw Tim Curry in makeup is when he portrayed the character Frank N. Furter in the Rocky Horror Picture Show. It's quite strange to imagine Tim Curry as Pennywise the killer clown when most of us remember him as the hotel concierge at the Plaza Hotel in Home Alone 2 Lost in New York. I remember renting the 2-part VHS tapes at Blockbuster when I was a kid and always thought that the first part was way more scarier than the second part. The only part I remember clearly from the second part was when they were growing up and fighting against Pennywise the giant spider. Aside from the horrendous second part, the first part will always be by far the most horrifying film in my collection, partly due to the fact that it deals with a killer clown. The many horror fantasies from Stephen King still amazes me to this day, and the one scene where the children are watching Pennywise alive in a picture album has always stayed with me as one of the most horrifying scenes in my childhood. Tim Curry will always be known to me as one of Macaulay Culkin's nemesis in Home Alone 2. Kind of. This film is a must-watch for all horror fans and horror fans of killer clowns, but I do advise that fans with a phobia against clowns should watch this film with great caution. Here are some honorable mentions before we get to the number 1 horror film in my collection. Keep in mind that these are only a small ounce of films out of many that weren't included in this video that deserve mentioning. Finally, topping off my top 5 list of horror films is John Carpenter's 1978 horror film, Halloween, starring Donald Pleasence and Jamie Lee Curtis. I've been a fan of Halloween since the first time I laid my eyes on this film. The originality, the suspense, and the horrifying story behind the mask of Michael Myers is what drew me to this film. Halloween is the pinnacle of serial killer slasher films, and have been an inspiration to many of the more popular slasher films to this day. As most of you are already fans of this film, you can relate to how well and how simplistic this film was made. I've never thought I'd be horrified of William Shatner's face in my life after Star Trek, but hey, anything can surprise you, right? There are roles that actors portray in films that stick with them throughout their careers, and Jamie Lee Curtis and Donald Pleasence have found their niche. Their iconic roles led to 6 more sequels and a couple of forgettable remakes. It would be surprising to me to see if any horror fans didn't have Halloween in their top 5 or top 10 list. So here it is, guys, my top 5 horror films. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. Also, please comment down below and let me know what your top 5 horror films are. And yeah, thanks for watching. JX Rico signing out.